Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Paul Meier is with us today. You all know who Dr. Paul Meier is. We also have a special guest, Dr. Mark Goulston. He joins us today to talk about mentoring. He's a psychiatrist, best-selling author, and podcaster on Mental Health News Radio Network. Some of his friends and guests have included Norman Lear, Larry King, and very soon, Dr. Paul Meier. Listen as two of the kindest people I know talk about how important being mentored and being a mentor has been to them throughout their lives.
I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Hey everyone, this is Kristin Sunanta Walker, and we have a show that I have no idea what we're actually going to end up talking about. I think we're going to talk about mentors and mentees with Dr. Paul Meier. Hello, Paul.
Yeah, hello, Kristin.
And Dr.
Hello,
Mark Goulston. Hi, Mark.
Geez, you sounded more enthusiastic with me than Paul. Come on, what am I, just the new kid on the block?
Yeah.
I thought we're past the novelty stage.
Kristin is surrounded by two psychiatrists tonight.
Exactly. So. I'm just going to shut up and you all go to town. How's that?
Well, we told her we were doing one on mentoring, but really we're going to analyze her on this show in front of everybody.
Oh God. Well, I've been analyzed for the best in the world. It gets boring.
We're a paradox.
Yeah, it gets boring in about 5 minutes.
It's paradoxical. Yeah.
Paradoctoral.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll kick it off.
Yeah,
I'll kick it off.
Ahead, Paul. Kick it off.
I'll say I want to say a few things about mentoring, and then Dr. Mark Goulston is actually an authority on mentoring. I'm not. It was just one topic that I thought of that we ought to cover. So I want to spend a lot more time hearing what he has to say than hearing what I say. And I haven't had any mentor who, like spent 3 years training me or things like that. But in a lot of people, when you hear the word mentor, I'd like all of you in our listening family right now to think about being a mentor yourself. Anybody that you inspire, it can be a little kid in your neighborhood. It can be your a friend or anybody that you inspire and listen to and help and maybe give a little bit of advice here and there. You're mentoring them. And I know my parents mentored me. When I look back on my life, I remember an 80-year-old lady, which seemed really old back then. Now that I'm 74, that seems pretty young, but an 80-year-old lady at our church walked up to me one time when I was about 13 and put her hands on my shoulders, and she said, and I hardly knew her, but she put her hands on my shoulders and said, Paul, someday God's going to really use you to help a lot of people. And I just thought, okay, well, thank you. I was planning on being a carpenter like my dad. But I said, thank you, but it stuck, and Dr. Bob Schindler was a surgeon at our church who even though I was planning on being a carpenter, like I said, he said, you ought to think about being a doctor someday. And then later on, that's too long a story, but later on I decided I'll do that. At Duke, I did my residency at Duke University, and one of my profs was William Wilson, not the one that wrote the big book, for Alcoholics Anonymous, but he did spend a lot of time with a few of us students, and had us to his home and all sorts of stuff. And one of my buddies, in fact, my best friend in residency, was Dr. David Larson, and he and I became prayer partners when we parted our ways. When we were at Duke, we both felt like we wanted to have a mission in life, not just a job. And so he ended up doing research on spirituality and its influence on mental health and physical health. And he did so much research on it that he ended up, when he died about 18 years ago, a chair was named after him at the Library of Congress for his integration of spirituality. And about half the medical schools in the country have a course on spirituality now to help doctors not put people down for having, various religious groups of, no matter what the religious group is, and how to be more accepting of those types of things. And so him and I, he really mentored me a lot, because we would call each other about once every week or two, and a prayer partner, somebody that encourages you and guides you and things. And we did that equally with each other, but we also confessed to each other. So when we did something that we felt like was narcissistic or that we felt bad about, and we would share that with each other, because when you talk about it with somebody, it helps you to grow. And but it was mostly he was such a spiritual guy that it was mostly me confessing to him. So when he died about 18 years ago, I've got a friend who's a psychologist in Paris, and that we've done some seminars together. So I called him up and said, my prayer partner died. Would you be willing to be my prayer partner? And he said, tell me first, why do you want somebody all the way here in Paris to be your prayer partner when you live in Dallas? He said, and I said, there's 3 reasons. I said, for one thing, you live 5,000 miles away, so I don't mind confessing things to you as much, because you're, so far away from me, nobody's going to hear it. And another thing is, you're a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. So we can analyze each other, why we mess up in certain. And then thirdly, my other prayer partner was such a spiritual guy. It was always me confessing to him. I said, you're French, so I know you'll sin at least as much as I do. And he said, I'm qualified. So he accepted. And so we really helped each other a lot. And then my prayer partner now, Dr. Jean-Luc Bertrand, ended up starting an orphanage where he raises, they raised 2,000 kids whose parents died of AIDS. And he won an Academy Award for doing a foreign documentary on AIDS kids. And he's just done a lot of good things. So we really inspired each other to do above and beyond just, normal jobs, but wanting to be an inspiration to other people. And Kristin and I mentor each other indirectly a lot, doing the radio program now. The past couple of years, she's sending me, emailing me stuff, and I'm emailing her stuff, or we're talking with each other. And and so I've picked that up, and I've mentored people myself. I mentioned David Larson, because he and I mentored each other. He's the psychiatrist that did the research, and Dr. Jean-Luc Bertrand now. He's coming to visit me in next month, but he lives in Paris, and we're both also sports buffs, and he used to own the soccer team for Paris. Abed Alexander is a guy who grew up in Haiti and went to Haitian schools, but I taught at Dallas Theological Seminary for a while, and he was one of my students. And here he grew up in those schools, but he was the smartest guy in the classes that I taught, and got straight A's and all that. And so he really felt a yearning toward psychology. And so after he got a seminary degree, we paid his way through PhD school, and he became a psychologist, and he taught at Harvard for a while. He's on our board actually now. John Townsend and Henry Cloud, I trained them before they ever went into psychology, and now they write they wrote the Boundaries books. They're both psychologists and wrote the Boundaries series of books that have sold millions of copies, and they've helped a lot of people. And Graham Barker was a student I had from Sydney, Australia, and I spent a lot of time with him. And when I taught at Trinity Seminary in Chicago, and paid his way through PhD school, and then trained him at one of our clinics. When he got through with his training, his other training, and he's just recently retired. I'm 74, and I think he's about 70 or 60 or something. But he just recently retired in Australia. But he wrote books and did radio and spoke places and did a lot of stuff that Mark Goulston's doing right now. And then one more, Tony Evans. Back when I taught at seminary in the 70s, there weren't a whole lot of African American students at a seminary like Dallas Theological Seminary, but one of them was Tony Evans, and he was just an outstanding student. Again, he was real smart. He was he had charisma, but he also had compassion. He had humility. He was willing to look at things, and so I met with him every Thursday for 3 years. For lunch at a Chinese restaurant near the seminary. So we had lunch together for 3 years. And I thought, if he's going to be a pastor, I'm going to teach him psychology so he can integrate that and with his sermons and things. And he ended up, he's got a large church in Oak Cliff, the Dallas area, Dallas suburb, and with thousands of members. And he's authored books, and that have sold over 1 million copies. And he mentors pastors all over the world now. So mentoring is really fun, and I like getting mentored, and I like mentoring, and it's not like I set out who will I mentor next or something like that. It just sort of evolves and happens. So I wanted to say that about mentoring. So you and our listening family right now, think, who can you have a positive influence on in your life? It could be, I call it prayer partner, but I mean, you can get any kind of, you can call it whatever you want to, you can call it Mickey Mouse partner or something if you want, but who can you mentor? And so that's what I wanted to say. So Mark, you're the expert. I just want to get my little narcissistic 2 cents worth in here and turn it over to you, because I can't wait to hear yours.
My expertise is not on studying it. It's like yours. It's having been mentored and now being a mentor to 25 people or so at various frequencies. And I want to mention something about frequencies, because sometimes you can be mentored by someone you met once, depending on what impact they have on your life. And you can be mentored by someone who you meet regularly. And I think what started off is I came from sort of a somewhat controlling childhood, and Kristin knows my tale of woe, but I'll make it brief. But I dropped out of medical school twice for untreated depression. And the second time I dropped out, the medical school wanted to kick me out because they were losing matching funds, even though I was passing. And to make a long story short, I met with the dean of the school, who cared about fundraising, and he referred me to the dean of students, who cared about students. And I was at a low point. And Kristin may have mentioned I have a passion for suicide prevention, because I think this dean of students probably saved my life, because I came from a background where your worth is what you produce. It's kind of a depression type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think the second time I dropped out, I couldn't hold on to information. I was highlighting books, but I couldn't recall it. And so I was dropping out for the second time, probably with an untreated depression. And I met with the dean of students, who shared a letter with me from the dean of the school. And the letter basically said to him, I've met with Mr. Goulston, and I'm advising, and we talked about an alternate career, and I'm advising the promotions committee that he'd be asked to withdraw. So they couldn't kick me out because I was miraculously passing things. And I said to the dean of students, what does this mean? I was really low, Paul. And he said, you've been kicked out. And it was like a gunshot wound. I mean, I kind of doubled over. And it was my good fortune that I didn't hit him with some passive aggressive sarcasm, because I was too far gone. I didn't say, they can't kick me out, I'm passing.
Yeah.
And it was my good fortune that I didn't go into, oh, well, what am I going to do? What happened is it was like a gunshot wound, and I know what that's like because I had a perforated colon about 12 years ago, and I almost died, and it was just like that. And he looked at me, the dean of students, and he said, Mark, you didn't screw up, but you are screwed up. But if you get unscrewed up, I think the school would be glad they gave you a second chance, because you have a streak of goodness in you that we don't grade in medical school. We should, but we don't. And you have no idea how much the world needs that goodness. And you're not going to know it till you're 35.
That's awesome.
But you have to make it till you're 35. Crying with his compassion. I mean, it was foreign to me. And then I couldn't look at him. And he pointed at me and he said, look at me, look at me. And he said, you deserve to be on this planet, and you're going to let me help you. Because if he had said, if I can help you, call me, I probably would have had false pride, gone back to my apartment, and I'd probably be dead. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I cratered, and I talk a lot about the power of surrender, which I think is often what faith provides a lot of people. You can surrender. Yeah. You can let go of control safely. And faith is believing you'll somehow make it through. And I surrendered to him because he said, look at me. And I remember I was just sobbing. And he said, you're going to let me help you. And I said, I think I'd like that. And he arranged an appeal. And I think what happened is I fell apart, and he reached his hands underneath and he caught me. And the fact that he then went to bat against the medical school to say, we need to give this kid another shot. And it was interesting. I was speaking to Reverend Jim Kowalski. You probably know him, Paul. He was the Reverend of St. John the Divine in many years. And when I was telling him the story, I felt this warm rush all the way through me. And I said to Reverend Kowalski, I said, the dean of students was an angel. I'm not even the right religion, but he was an angel sent to me. he was sent to save my life. And without missing a beat, Reverend Jim said, yes, he was, Mark. He could have said, yes, he was, Mark. You want to donate? But anyway, but And when I talk about this, what I share with people is I say, the good news when a real angel comes into your life is you walk differently in the world. The challenging news is you have to pay it forward. You have no other choice. And so that's why I became a suicide specialist for 25 years, and none of my patients killed themselves, because I just did exactly what the dean of students did for me. Getting back to mentoring, so that was my first mentor, and I asked someone I recently have been mentoring, I said, so tell me what helps. And this person I've been mentoring through a real tough time, he said, you put your heart into my life, Mark. And I thought, whoa, I don't know what that means, but it sure sounds eloquent. I like that. And I think, to me, mentoring is doing some of that. You put your heart into someone else's life, and they can feel it, especially if they're going through a rough time.
Yeah. So that's kind of my story. But ever since then, it just turned everything around, and it was interesting. I'll share something that I'm embarrassed to share. In my high school yearbook, which I hope nobody has a copy of, you know how you put down your clubs and favorite phrases. And I put down the most cynical phrase, which, and essentially I was saying, you're an idiot if you believe in anything. It was very cynical and sarcastic. And what's interesting is after that experience, the only thing that matters in life is believing in things. And for me, it's believing in people. And so that's how I've continued to mentor people, and I love doing that. And I'll share one last story, and then I'll drop my narcissism, and then we can hear from Kristin.
I've had 7 mentors. My last one was a leadership guy named Warren Bennis, pretty well known in the leadership field. And he mentored David Gergen and Howard Schultz from Starbucks. He advised presidents. And Warren was not just respected, he was beloved. If you want to see the memorial service that you want for your, after you die, look up Warren Bennis Memorial Service. I think it's on Vimeo, but it was amazing. David Gergen got emotional. David Gergen does not get emotional. And but I remember in the last year of his life, Warren was saying to me, Mark, I'm trying to be a good sport. And they parade me around the USC to the Marshall School, and I'm irrelevant. They say I wrote all these books on leadership, but I'm irrelevant. And I'm trying to be grateful because I've been relevant into my 80s. Most people don't get to do that, but it hurts to be irrelevant. So one of the reasons I continue to mentor people is I think it helps me to be relevant. And I think it is. And I think one of the best things you can do as you get older is to really help younger people arrive in their future. So that's my opening gambit.
I love it. And the only thing, so many people, I believe the vast majority of people in the world, deep down inside, feel like a nobody, and goes through life trying to prove that they're not a nobody. And so very few people get deep, like you did just now, where they actually deeply love and are loved. I'm not saying, people don't, a lot of people do, but especially nowadays, fewer do. And there's something to live for other than feeding our face.
Yeah, I want to say something because you use the word nobody, and something that I often say out in the world in some of my talks. I say, one of the greatest opportunities of being someone who's perceived as a somebody, you can make an invisible nobody visible. And just even making eye contact and finding out what their name is, that can last them a lifetime. I remember a few years ago, someone emailed me from India and was having some sort of issue, some young man, and I wrote him back. And this is the power that you can have and with just even the briefest contact. And I wrote him back, and he wrote back and he said, "No one as famous as you has ever written out my name." I mean, isn't that amazing?
Significant.
Yeah. And so it helped him feel like he wasn't a nobody, and we can all do that. Your
specialty is in suicide prevention, and when you were talking, I remembered a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It was a number of years ago, where 13 different psychiatrists and psychologists from different schools actually interviewed 90,000 high school students. 90,000 in or they have them fill out a questionnaire and things like that. And the teen suicide rate was 300% higher than it had been 50 years earlier. And something like 1 out of 22 females and 1 out of 32 males had, seriously considered suicide in the previous 12 months. And it went into all that sort of thing. And the young people that had a spiritual connection with other people and with God actually had a much lower suicide rate than people who didn't. And I think in our society today, so many people, they get on Facebook and superficial things like that. And when I see a new patient who's in his or her 20s, and I ask them, well, how many friends do you have that you can share anything with? You can just sit down and share your gut level feelings with, your sorrow, your happiness, the most usual response I get is, do you mean there's really people like that? And it just seems like when I was a kid, we really did share with our friends and things like that. A few close friends anyway. And so mentoring is also, like you mentioned, it's loving people and reaching out to them, and even calling their name. People love to hear their name. It makes them feel important. I write down, if we have employees that I hardly ever see, like that do the janitor work or things like that, I'll write down their name and put it in my iPhone, on my notebook, and then be sure to call them by their name next time. I have to pull it out first. If I see them around the corner, I have to pull it out and then walk around the corner and say hi, because I'm not good at remembering names. But I appreciate you saying that.
I'll tell you, there's a personal mission I have that's other than the suicide prevention thing, and you're reminding me that I've slipped on it. And I learned this from a friend of mine. And whenever I speak, I give this as an exercise, kind of a homework assignment. And I said, once a day, if you can, if you run into one of the invisible functionary people in the world, the cashier, the TSA person, go up to them when you're passing them and ask them, what made you smile today, and say their name. What made you smile today, Judy? John. And what happens is, now sometimes they're in a rush, but what's happened is you have just pulled them out of being an appliance and turned them into a person. I did that at a McDonald's. I was getting a coffee, and I said that to the cashier. And she looked at me, and she got a second hit of what made her smile. And she talked about, my grandchild. So what's your grandchild's name? She mentioned, I think it was Janice or something like that. And I said, good. And what was interesting is, as I was drinking my coffee, she kept looking over at me, smiling. But it's multiply rewarding, because when you do that, you not only help them feel like a person, you not only give them a second scoop of good feeling, but you get out of your narcissism. You get out of your self-involvement. And so I often give that as a homework assignment whenever I speak. I say, I'd like you to try this for a week and see what the experience is like. And it's amazing what it does to you if you do it for a week and hopefully continue it. Let me ask the two of you, Paul, what made you smile today?
What you shared just now made me smile. I'm sitting here smiling right now.
Great.
And I remembered because you and I really, we got a lot of stuff in common. I'm just getting to know you, and you're just getting to know me. But one of the first books that I wrote, the second book that I wrote, is called Happiness is a Choice. And in there, and I don't know if you heard of Paul Tournier, the Swiss psychiatrist that wrote a lot of really good psychiatry, but for lay people to read on loving and being loved and things like that. In my book, I listed 7 steps, 7 things that people can do to. I didn't mean you can turn on a switch and choose happiness. You can choose to get that way, and you may need medication, you may need therapy, you may need, but you can choose to overcome depression. But so happiness is a choice. But one of the 7 things that I listed that you can do that will really help you to get over depression is think of somebody each week that you can do something nice for without them knowing that you're doing it. Find somebody and think of something nice that you can do for somebody, and keep it a secret. So you're not doing it to get them to like you or anything else. You're just doing it to do something to get your mind out of yourself and help somebody else. And of course I don't do that once a week, but I do look for opportunities to do that. And it really is what you shared just now is very similar. Just reaching out and chatting with somebody that you just run into at a McDonald's or something.
Yeah, and Kristin, what made you smile besides putting Paul and me together?
Well, I was going to say that's the thing that's making me smile consistently. Yep, I knew they would really hit it off. Gosh, what else made me smile today? I had a discussion with a woman that I've worked with for years who's a mentor, and she gets right to the point with me, which I really appreciate, and it made me really smile.
Something that's making me smile about the two of you, you both talk with people. That's different than talking to people.
Right.
And when you're able to talk with people, and you just overflow with it, Paul. And Kristin, she's a hybrid because she's much more practical and businesslike than me. So she's able to get to the point. She's able to cut to the chase. But she's also able to talk with people. So, but I'm smiling because I'm just taking in the two of you and the hunger in the world to have people like the two of you who can speak with people so that people can lean into it and not feel so alone. So I got a big grin on my face.
I did live radio. I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Frasier.
Oh yeah.
The psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I did that 5 years before he started his TV show, but I did a live radio program call in from noon to 1 every day Central Time in 400 on 400 stations to an average of 2 million people a day, and I did that for about 25 years, 5 days a week, and you get a feel that when you're talking right directly with people and they're asking you stuff and you're not just giving advice, but you're chatting with them and stuff, and you really feel part of the world or part of human beings, and so now that we do a podcast, it's not like we can hear the people, but I mean Kristin does, she gets emails and things all the time, but I feel not like it's not just me and you and Kristin talking right now. There's thousands of people that will download this. There've been a few of the podcasts where that were done that Kristin has been part of that were almost 500,000 people have downloaded it. But there's thousands of people that are listening to what we're sharing right now, and so I visualize that I'm just sitting here having a conversation with them. That's why I'll pause and say, for those of you in our listening family, because I want them to know that we're chatting with them too, even though we don't hear them out loud. Mm-hmm. And if I do hear them out loud, then Mark, I'll call you up and you can give me some medication for that.
I was going to say, you're going to need a prescription. We'll add that to the shows that we do on medication.
Yeah, we've done a lot on medication.
Something that has helped me to be more present, because sometimes I get distracted by my ego and the need to impress and the need to name drop and yada, yada, yada. And I get away with it because I know people, but afterwards, I think, could you be any more insecure than that, Mark? And
that's funny.
Something that has helped me is because you mentioned our listening audience, and I pause and I think, I say our listening family, actually. Okay, listening family.
Not listening audience, but they're our listening family. They're our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and kids.
Well, I'm just new to the family, so there you go. Okay. So I'm glad to be part of it. But our listening family, what I will pause and ask myself, they're listening for something. They're not listening just to us. They're listening for something.
Yeah.
And the family, and I'm guessing that what they're listening for is they want to feel inspired because they want something that will lift them up out of whatever they're stuck in. And they're also listening for something that maybe can motivate them to take action so they can not just be inspired, but sustain some positive change in their life. And I think they're also listening for people that they can actually believe, have trust in, maybe respect, maybe be people that don't turn out to have feet of clay or worse. And I think there's a hunger in our listening family. Of course, I'm just an interloper, so what do I know? And I think if that's true. I can just imagine them listening, and I would certainly like them to, add comments to tell us if that's what they're, what are you listening for, our listening family? What are you listening for in this podcast? And when you listen to Kristin and Paul, what are you listening for? Because we're all here. We want to be of service.
Yeah.
And
That's great. Hey, Kristin.
Yeah.
Kristin, can you tell our listening family right now, based on what Mark just said, can you tell them right now an email address or
Yeah,
somehow
absolutely.
where they can because I'd love to get a whole bunch of emails from those of you that are listening to us right now.
We
And
get
I'd like to know what Mark just said. I know, but let's ask for a special email from as many of you as possible. And what are you looking for when you listen to these particular podcasts? I know the ones that get downloaded the most.
Yeah, I got one
The ones that
today.
get downloaded the most, Mark, are ones on how to protect yourself from narcissists and boundaries and things like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people
always.
feel taken advantage of, and I think, I know that's one reason why they listen is to realize they can't even break away.
Right. Exactly.
Go ahead, Kristin. Though. Share with them an email.
Well, if anybody wants to email us, you can send the email. The easiest one would be info@mhnrnetwork.com.
Mental Health News Radio.
Yep. Or you can send it to
yeah.
info@mentalhealthnewsradio.com. Yep. Well, yeah, we got info@mhnrnetwork.com.
Okay.
Or info@mentalhealthnewsradio.com.
Okay.
And I mean, we got one today that just mostly, Paul, because we've been doing this for so long. And I get the same kind of responses when I do shows with Mark, is they feel the warmth between us when we're speaking, that there's a friendship there. And so they like to listen because they're listening to people that, really like each other, have a warm conversation. Yeah. So that's what we get the most, are those kind of comments. So that's nice.
Yeah. I think when I listen to somebody like Mark, sharing that, especially if you listen to somebody many times over, then you do feel like you're part of the family, part of the like you're connecting to other souls.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And something Mark said early on was, Mark, you when you got depressed back in medical school, it was because you felt like a human doing instead of a human being.
Right. And I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you're basing your worth on what you could do, instead of on just, somebody that you could just love unconditionally and then accept the way you were and grow and learn and not have to earn worth. You don't have to earn worth. We can't put our self-worth in somebody else's pocket. We got to put it in our own pocket. So that meant a lot to me that you shared that. That's a good lesson that Kristin and I talk about a lot on the radio, that we want people to be human beings, not humans doing.
Yeah, I've placed so much value on what it is I can do, especially what it is I can do myself and what I do for others, and just really dialing back from that. And really a lot of it too is when you dial back from it and you just, for me, practice gratitude. I actually have a friend that every day at the same time, he lives in the state of Washington, and I'm on the East Coast. So he's at a different time zone, but same time every day, we have an alarm go off on our clock that just reminds us to sit, even if it's for 10 seconds, and say to ourselves, I'm so profoundly grateful, and I receive gratefully, because we're so busy doing for, ourselves, but mostly for other people, that we forget to even think about the fact that we can receive. And a lot of times we will bat away, like great things will come to us and we will just bat them away. Oh, no, because I have to focus on this. So that's our reminder every day to just sit.
I had no idea.
And receive.
Every
Yeah.
day,
Every day, the
your
alarm.
goes off.
Every day, my alarm goes off, and then I just take a minute. I put my hand on my heart, and I just, even if all I have is 2 seconds, I don't care if I'm in a meeting. I just go. I put myself on mute, and I go, okay, yes, I gratefully receive. And if I can do longer, then I do longer. But yeah. Every day, it's been great.
That's cool. That's unique.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion for you, Kristin, because I've gotten to know you.
Actually, you know who it is, Mark. It's Adam Klugman. He wouldn't care if I say his name. Yeah. We do that every day.
Cool.
I'd like you to add to that exercise.
Oh God, no! It was enough to get us to do that. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I'll share an anecdote, because every now and then I will see human doings, and I remember someone that I mentor is this really dynamic, amazing woman, and she's just a dynamo. And I remember this was some years ago, and I said, I know what you're most afraid of, and it's not being controlled, criticized, put down, or any of those things. You don't like those, but you're sort of, you have defenses. And she was really smart and feisty, and she looked at me. She said, well, what am I afraid of? And I looked her straight in the eye, and I said, you're afraid of feeling unconditionally safe emotionally, and there is nothing you can do to earn it, and there is nothing you can do to lose it. And she looked at me, and it was like her head collapsed. She just collapsed into the couch and just started crying. And she said, you just hit a nerve that goes back beyond anything I can remember. And I'd like you to add to your gratitude thing, to say to yourself, Kristin, that you're safe. Just say to yourself, I'm safe.
I can do that. I will. That's a rare time, Mark, that you gave me an exercise to do that I didn't cry.
Well, you'll cry when you do it, but because that's what we want to getting back to spirituality. That's what we want to surrender into. When I work with veterans who are suicidal, I'll tell you, it's almost boilerplate that when they reach that point, and they go through this sequence of not in control, out of control, I'm shattering, and the next step is I'm going to fragment, so I'm going to kill myself because I'm never coming back. And that's when many veterans will be literally staring down the barrel of their gun, and that's when they discover God, and they start to cry. They say, God, I don't want to kill myself. I don't want to die, but I can't take it anymore. And what happened is in that moment, they surrender control, not something that a word that military like to use, but they will say the word, God, I don't want to die, but I can't take it anymore. And when they start to cry, they start to feel relief. And then they start to reconstitute mentally. And so I've just heard that story so often. And so, I would love you to be able to collapse into being able to think to yourself and just even say, Kristin, you can use whoever's voice. It could be Paul. It could be Paul and me saying it to you. You're safe, Kristin. And just take it in.
I can do that. Definitely. Well, gentlemen, we have 10 minutes left. What are we going to talk about?
One thing that I don't know if this is related or not, but what Kristin and I do, Mark, is whatever pops into our head, we sort of spit it out. And it may not be relevant, but we usually figure out, some way to make it relevant. But I was thinking about King Solomon. I think he's one of the, in my book, he's one of the wisest people that ever lived. And he lived 3,000 years ago. And if people study Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Psalms, you learn so much. It's the best psychology book that there is. And like he talked about, his father, King David, talked about the unconscious. He said a prayer in Psalm 139. He said, God, search my innermost innermost being, search me and reveal to me the parts of myself that I don't see, so I can mature and, walk in a way that's pleasing to you. And Solomon, in Ecclesiastes, he said he had, the insignificant thing, wanting to feel significant. And like most people on the planet, he was tempted to do that. In fact, he went ahead and did it. And sex, power, and money are the three main ways that people try to prove their significance. And none of them work. And so he had 1,000 wives and concubines, and he said, I did not withhold from myself any pleasure. And I'm sure he had fun for a while, but he said it was meaningless. It became meaningless. It didn't make him feel important. And he had so much money. He had silver nuggets laying on his yard, and things like that. He was the wealthiest man on the planet. And he said, it's all meaningless. It felt good for a while, but it's all meaningless. And then he had the most power. He was the most powerful king on earth for a while. And he said, that's meaningless too. And then, when you just read the first, there's 12 chapters in Ecclesiastes. And when you read the first 11, you just feel like crying, like you're crawling up into a ball and just giving up, because life is meaningless. He convinces you in there how meaningless life is. But then he says the conclusion of the matter, though, is that he found that if you serve God and mentor, he was talking about mentoring. If you serve God and reach out to connect with people, that gives you meaning. That's the only thing that gives you meaning. Sex, power, and money, and he was the authority on all three, don't get you there. And I remember thinking, boy, if I become an MD, I'm really going to feel important. And I strove, and I felt depressed a couple of times during medical school too. I had the books over my head when I was a senior, and I was going to throw them down and quit. And because it was so, painful, and the verbal abuse from some of the profs and things. But finding that when I walked across the stage and got my MD degree, I felt bad, because here I'd been, all these years of hard study, and I thought finally I'm going to feel significant. And then I got my degree, and everywhere I walked, my butt followed me. I was still there. I was still me, and I still didn't. It didn't do anything for me. And I had to find it in other ways. And like Mark, like you're saying, it's more, I don't know how to word it. It's more not based on what you're doing, but on loving and being loved and loving yourself. You can only love other people. I wrote a book called Love is a Choice, on codependency. And I talk about, in order to love other people, you got to fill your own love tank first, so you have some of it to spill out onto other people. And so we have to accept ourselves and love ourselves. Kristin and I ask people a lot of times that are listening in our listening family to get a piece of paper. Here's a homework assignment that we'll give you, Mark. Get a piece of paper tonight, or the back page of your Bible or a journal or somewhere that you keep, and write today's date down, and say, "Dear Mark," and everybody listening to us, I want you to do that to yourself. Dear self, dear me, I promise from today forward to be your best friend, and I'm going to make an effort not to say anything negative to you that I wouldn't tell my best friend under the same circumstances. So, like if you leave your lights on and you go out and your battery's dead, instead of saying to yourself, "You stupid idiot," you stop and ask, okay, what would I tell my best friend if my best friend drove me here today and he or she left their lights on, the battery was dead when we got out to the car? I wouldn't turn to them and say, "You stupid idiot." You would tell them the truth. And life's tough enough. There's a lot of tough times in life just based on truth. But a lot of times half the pain we go through is because we believe lies that we learned either in childhood or somewhere along the line. And we'll tell ourselves that we're stupid idiots when we would tell our best friend that, hey, you're just human. We all make mistakes. And so if you stop and think, what would I tell my best friend, and tell that to yourself, then you'll start living based on reality rather than based on negative crap. And so you'll be mentoring yourself. I guess I didn't know how this tied in with this. I just kept thinking about it when we were talking about different things. I think the way it ties in is that we need to mentor ourselves too.
Absolutely.
So can I mention something? Do we still have a little more time?
Of course.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, we have as much time as you want.
Okay, because
Kristin will, edit out
I'll edit
all
out
the
20
and
minutes
ahs,
here
and
there.
if you take out all my and ahs, it'll
It's
add an
20
extra 10
minutes.
minutes to what we're saying. So
Yes,
So
go ahead, Mark. I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
So you just
feeling.
triggered something, and this is the benefits of having mentors. So I have something I call the Dead Mentor Society. I have 7 mentors, starting with that fellow in medical school. The last one was Warren Bennis, this leadership guy. And see, I'm not able to write a letter to myself because at my core, I'm a we. And I've often felt less than other men because I'm not an I, I'm a we. And I sometimes feel like a lonesome warrior, and there's many times when I'm not the warrior. And so what I do is when I feel I've blown it, I've been verbose, I've been too much name dropping, whatever it is, I will call upon one of my dead mentors, and they talk me down from DEFCON 1 of criticizing myself to DEFCON 4. And what happens is I just feel blessed that they were in my life. I feel blessed that they believed in me. I feel grateful. And when I feel overflowing with gratitude towards them, my self-criticism dissipates. And I've often felt less than other people who can use self-statements. I've never been able to use self-affirmations, but I can imagine any of my dead mentors saying to me, and now what's happened is I have an abbreviated form. So if I was to say to them after this podcast, "Oh, Mark, you were so tangential. Could you finish a story for, once in your life? Can you ever get back to the point?" And so now, here's the abbreviated version. I can pull any of the dead mentors out of my mind. And I said, I did it again. And they'll say, "Well, what did Kristin and Paul think?" And I'll say, "I think they liked it. I think they'll have me back." And so here's the abbreviated.
Yeah,
what they all say to me is, "Mark, what? Put a sock in it." And I just feel their love. I just feel their love, and I put a sock in it, and I laugh because a combination of missing them, feeling grateful, and that the two of you will have me back.
Of course, we'd love to.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been really, really awesome.
Yeah,
This is really awesome.
I will say this because we are out of time, but one, I've had many mentors. The two of you are two of them. One of them that I just love is nobody famous, nobody well known. In fact, every time you try to email her or even call her, there's like some issue with email or some issue with the phone or whatever. Sometimes I'm like, do I need to send you a carrier pigeon? Like, how do I get a hold of you? And she's just this woman that lives on a mountain in the mountains of North Carolina. And everybody somehow finds her to work with her. And she's probably one of the wisest souls I've had the honor of knowing. And she's somebody that will she's got my number. Like, she's got my number. And she knows exactly how to deliver my number to me when I need it. So I think we're all really lucky that we have them. And then when you get the chance to be one, when you get old enough to be a mentor to somebody else, it's a wonderful feeling. And it's interesting when you're sitting in your own life, you don't always see yourself how other people see you. I mean, we unless you're extremely narcissistic and you're in fantasy island about yourself, but yeah. I don't see myself how other people seem to see me. And sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes that's not such a good thing. But I really like the fact that everybody that I count as a mentor, a close friend, someone that I work with a really great colleague is someone just like that. They really don't know how incredible they are and how many lives they touch every single day.
Something that you and I have mentioned a lot of times on our programs, Kristin, is that whenever two people meet, and Mark, you might be interested in this too, being
Oh yeah, I love this, Paul. Tell
being
this.
a head shrinker.
I thought about
being
this
a head
today.
Shrinker, you know, whenever two people meet, there's really 6 people present. The 2 people as they see themselves, the 2 people as they see each other, and the 2 people as they really are.
Mm.
And so none of us really know. You know, I mean, you've studied the unconscious and all that. You know, about 80% of our thoughts, feelings, and motives we're not even aware of. You know, and so when you really connect with somebody, you're. I mean, we need to remain open-minded to look at who we really are, and to be accepting of the flaws that we may become aware of, and I think that's why the 12 steps is so powerful to help people heal. But there's 6 people present. So right now, Mark, you and I met. You know, we've emailed each other before, but this is the first time we've talked to each other. And so there's you and I as we see ourselves, you and I as we see each other, and then there's you and I as we really are. And if we did spend a lot of time together, we would both find out a lot more about who we really are. So those 6 people would sort of merge over a period of time into more awareness of who we really are, and how we can use that, for good in our own lives and the lives of others.
Absolutely. I know for me, having known Paul for 2 years now, that he is the last person that you ever want to text when you have a busted rib.
You got to explain that to Paul. Explain that to
So I cracked a rib.
To our listening family right now.
That
was horrible. I was cruel. Cruel.
It was hilarious. I cracked a rib horseback riding. Such a minor.
About
minor.
a week ago, right?
No, Friday. Friday morning. And
so I kept telling you how important it is not to laugh, because
so he keeps sending me stuff, and I'm like, oh, but I'm sitting in the emergency room laughing.
Little funny videos and funny emojis and stuff like that. I try to get her to laugh. That was cruel.
It was hilarious. No, because I love that. But that's the kind of thing. This is what people tune in for. And Mark, when you and I have done shows and we go right into he always makes me cry, Paul, just immediately. But that's what people are listening for. They want to hear that connection, and they want to hear other people having connection. Because I think in our disconnected world, our phone becomes, has become an appendage, and it's a barrier between us and other people. People want to hear, that's what authentic connection is. That the familiarity between people, the, inside joke that you make an outside joke, that kind of stuff. I think that's what people really want to tap into, because it's a reminder you can have that too. It's not lost, but you do have to work for it,
I'm going to introduce a word that Kristin and I have spoken about just to, for our listening family. And it's called interbeing. And I think it's 40, 50 years old. I'm forgetting the person who came up with it. But interbeing is space between what we're saying. And you feed interbeing by curiosity, caring, and compassion. And you ruin it by the opposite of that, by being presumptuous, not caring, and hurtful. But so I want to introduce that, because I think the listening family has gotten a taste of, I think, very good interbeing. Mm-hmm. So we each spoke and we each have ideas, but there's something in the space between us that I would stand this up against any technology.
Yes, exactly.
This is what's missing. All these iPads and everything, there's no interbeing.
Right.
But I encourage our listening family, to just marinate in that idea. Try to increase the interbeing between you and other people by curiosity, caring, and compassion. See what it does to your life.
Right. It says it means to interdependently coexist. So to interdependently coexist, the meaning of interbeing, recognize the dependence of any one person or thing to all other people and objects. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think we can connect with people on a spiritual basis, and like Mark was saying, it's not just words, but on a spiritual basis. Somehow it feels like that. Like
absolutely,
you connect not just with words, but with your spirit can connect with somebody else's.
This conversation is feeling more like summer camp, and I don't want to leave.
Yeah, I know.
We'll go back to our transactional, empty lives, and I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, you'll come back. I'm actually going to Greece, so this is the last show for me until until October. For the Roundtable shows, but tomorrow I interview Rabbi Steve Leader, which is
great. I'm glad you guys connected. That's wonderful.
Me too. So I'm excited. But anyway, I will say thank you. And everyone, you can find out more information about Dr. Mark Goulston by going to www.markgoulston.com. And of course, Dr. Paul Meier at Meier Clinics, MEIER clinics.com. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on.
It's been awesome. I really appreciate you, Mark.
I appreciate you. Hey, while she's away, you and I can do something.
That's right. Paul, you could still do your shows with Mark if you want to.
I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it, but I oppose it.
Good boy.